Exactly, cues for days.
Hey guys, it's musicninjamat here, finally doing my Star Wars The Last Jedi review. Usually I do them instantly as soon as I've seen the film. However, for this one, it was such a long film, it was late when we got back, and I've been at work, and I wanted time to properly sort of get my thoughts together about the film and properly make notes on it. Straight away, I will say there will be spoilers for this film. The whole thing is going to be spoiled. Firstly, I'd just like to point out with the plot, there were sort of four main plot points. Because we had Rey and Luke and seeing her training and what they go through. We had Finn and new character Rose as they were working on side missions to help out the rebels and try and save them at all costs. We saw Poe and new character Holdo and sort of their back and forth bickering and Poe's trying to keep everyone together on the rebel base while Finn's off trying to save them. And of course we saw General Hux and Kylo Ren and sort of what the baddies are up to. Firstly, I'll go through what I really praise and enjoy about the film, and then I'll go through stuff that it's not that I hated, it's stuff that I just queried with it. So straight away, it's very obvious that the humour is there in this film, and with The Force Awakens, there was this humour that I don't think was ever really in Star Wars. That's clearly like a Disney touch they've put in. The humour's great in the film. It's very light at points, which I like. I don't like really over-the-top humour, so it works well. Rey was a character that Daisy Ridley was just so much better in this than The Force Awakens. Rey just felt like a stronger character, and I just much preferred her portrayal in this. Carrie Fisher was beyond incredible. It's a fantastic performance. Leia is an incredible character in this, and at one point, which I loved, she gets pulled out of a ship and I was like, oh my god, they're killing Leia off, and you see her sort of force push her way back, and it becomes more apparent that she is force sensitive and a force user, which I was like, that's a cool nod to some of the extended universe stuff. Poe's a character I still don't know how I feel about him. He had an arc in this where he's supposed to go from a hot-headed fighter pilot and grow into a proper leader. The intent was there, and I enjoyed his growth, but I'm still not sure how I feel about the character. We had the new character of Rose. I actually warmed up to her quite quickly, considering she was a new character, and she's brought in this weird love triangle dynamic in a way, because I assumed Finn and Rey were kind of gonna get together, and you can see in this film how much they care about each other, but Rose and Finn kind of have a thing. The hand-to-hand fights in this, the lightsaber battles, were great. The one where Rey and Kylo are just taking down Snoke's guards, incredible. The fights are just so well done. The lightsaber battles are amazing. It's this great mixture of nostalgia for the original trilogy, but some of the more intense fights we got in stuff like Revenge of the Sith. Maz was back for a little cameo, and I love that character. She was so funny in this as she's chatting away to them as she's in some massive battle, and she's just kicking ass, and it was great. We saw Yoda come back, and in the cinema you could see people being like, this is amazing. And what was odd was he was very much his original trilogy silly self as he's talking to Luke. He started off looking weird CGI, and then it was clear he looked like the puppet, and he looked great. And one thing I liked with it was they went into some more of the Jedi lore. So where Luke is on that island, there's actually the original Jedi texts, and we just got more of a build on the Jedi. The new character of Holdo, she was amazing in this, as she kind of took over after Leia, because Leia was incapacitated for a bit. And she starts off as you hating her because she's very against Poe, and then you see that actually she was doing everything right. She was really trying to keep the rebels alive, and her entire arc ending with her staying behind, sacrificing herself, I did enjoy it. The only thing with it was she basically used light speed to crash into the main ship, and the only thing was, it was one of those classic, why did she wait so long to do that kind of thing, and I was unaware that light speed could be used in such a way. The music was fantastic. They drew back all the old themes, all at the right times. The music in this was phenomenal. I'll get into it in a second, because the first half of the film, I wasn't really a fan of Luke's character and decisions. However, towards the end, he turns up at the Rebel base. There's just this one moment where I was like, fuck yes. And it's where Luke's holding his lightsaber with two hands and he lets go and smiles. And the thing is, Mark Hamill kept saying, we should be fighting with one hand, be able to flip them. And George Lucas always said, no, it's like Excalibur, it's heavy. And the fact that they finally let him use the lightsaber how he wanted, I thought that was fantastic. We got this weird fake death for Luke where you see Kylo slice him, but Luke has actually used the Force to project himself there. And he has a great meeting up with Leia. They get to interact, which is great. And then we see Luke exhausted, and he just has this moment of clarity, and he gives himself to the Force, and his robes drop down. I loved that, but at the same time, it was the fake Luke death straight into a real death, which was odd. Things that I queried, mainly the pacing. This is a very long film. And the thing is, when I say not much happens, what I mean is everything's drawn out a lot. Like, this didn't need to be a 2.5 hour film. You could have had all the same beats and plot points, but in a much shorter time, and it really was just a bit killer. As I said, I don't like the first half of the film where Luke does the classic trope of just being the bitter guy that doesn't want to help them and nothing matters, and it's all just a bit odd. We have his story where basically he saw darkness in Ben Kenobi, in Kylo, and for a split second was thinking about killing him. Kylo sees this, freaks out, and they end up fighting. And so it's one of those, did Luke create Kylo? And he sees the same sort of darkness in Rey. There's a weird thing that happens where Rey and Kylo are able to interact with each other through the Force and like speak to each other. It's like a Harry Voldemort kind of thing, and we find out this was actually orchestrated by Snoke, and I'm glad they gave some explanation as to why they could interact in this way. I know it is Star Wars, and I know there are going to be ship battles, but there were a lot of them in this, and they were quite long. And with me, I say it about Lord of the Rings and a lot of films, the big battles like this, I'm not always a huge fan of. I prefer character moments. It's not a bad point, it's just for me personally, it was something I grew a bit tired of seeing so much. And I know it's such a ridiculous thing to say because it is Star Wars. And it's one of the things I always pick up on in Star Wars, how like every weapon has to heat up. And there's all these weird convenient delays in battle. And like a ship will get blown to pieces. Everyone's dead apart from your heroes, and of course your heroes aren't going to die, but it's always just the conveniences that happen, not just in Star Wars but in all films, where you can't help but just chuckle a little bit. Also, I hate porgs so much. They bring tiny comic relief, but they're there just to be toys. They're creatures that just make a stupid sound, and I just don't like them at all. Kylo Ren does like a double turn where he stands beside Rey and you're like, yes, he's with Rey. We saw the conflict in him. You see earlier, he goes to shoot Leia's ship and he can't do it. And you're just like, we want this character just to come back and be good. But then he says to Rey, everything needs to die. The First Order does, but so do the Jedi, so do the Rebels. We can lead together. And you're like, for fuck's sake, Kylo. And then he ends up becoming the Supreme Leader and just being a dick. And I've argued with people how everyone's like, that's it, he's completely lost to the dark. And I'm like, but the way this character's being portrayed, I think he will turn good at some point, and I think he will come back, and I'd like to see him come back. But the double turn was a bit irritating to me. Two huge plot points that were set up in The Force Awakens were who are Rey's parents, and obviously Snoke. Who is he? Fan theories poured in over the last 2 years, and what really irritated me was Snoke is killed like that, he's gone. Nothing came of it. No history behind him. I want to know, who is he? Why was he a Supreme Leader? Where has he come from? And with Rey's parents, Kylo Ren's like, I know who your parents are. And you're like, oh my god, who are they? And he goes, They were junk trash. They were nobody. When it actually makes no sense that you're such a big player in all of this. It could be that's Kylo manipulating her. You know, Rey's parents could be some major characters. We might learn more about Snoke. Like, these are things that could definitely still happen in episode 9, but it felt like a bit of a slap in the face that two huge mysteries were so easily dismissed in this film. Finn went to look for somebody that could basically hack and get them onto Snoke's ship. And they end up finding a guy called DJ, who's the collector, by the way, and he's always so odd in films. But it was his, again, turn on them where he sort of sold them out and he was like, that's how war works. It builds on an interesting concept where Finn's like, well, those guys are the bad guys. And he goes, they're selling ships to both sides. He was like, this is what war does. People profit off war. There's no good and bad, and all of this. Such an interesting idea. But I think one of the things with this film is, for what was quite a straightforward plot, they were like, and then this twist, and this twist, and this person turns, and like, they tried to throw in so many twists and character turns that it felt a bit much for me. Phasma came back, and when she showed up, I was like, fuck, this is it. Phasma's going to be badass this film. And again, she did very little, had a little bit of a scuffle, and then it looks like she died. We're not sure if she did, but I was like, you wasted her again. And from what I've heard, her in the comic, she's an incredible character. There was a moment with Finn where, it sounds bad, but it looked like he was going to die. And I was like, this would actually be an amazing moment in this film where they're setting up a cannon and he's riding straight for it. And he's like, you can only attack it when it's open, when it's charging. We need to go in. And it looked like he was about to just drive his ship in. And it really builds up and builds up. And I was like, what an incredible moment if he just drove in, sacrificed himself. And he didn't. Rose ended up crashing into him, saving him. Because this is the other thing. Every time Finn makes a plan to save them, it doesn't work. It's a weird one, because it's kind of like, sometimes your plans aren't going to work. Sometimes people are going to die, and things are going to go tits up. But none of his plans worked. My very last point is just that we had something that's odd, because it's called The Last Jedi, and it's Snoke and even Kylo kind of feel like, once Luke's gone, we've killed the Jedi. And Luke's like, I'm not the last Jedi. Hinting, Rey is. But then at the very end, we noticed there's these kids you see throughout the film, and it looks like one of them force pulls a broom to himself, and then he stood holding it, kind of like a lightsaber, looking up, and he's got a rebel symbol on a ring. And we're a bit like, are they trying to hint that, like, the Jedi are nowhere near dead? Like, is it a subtle nod to that? So we weren't quite sure what it meant. Oh, one thing I've missed was the character of Hux. There was a moment where Kylo sort of passed out, he's starting to get back up, and Hux goes to grab something, and everyone was like, oh, it's probably his blaster. But I looked and was like, just as a theory, what if Hux is a Sith and what he was actually going for was a lightsaber? Only because I can't see Kylo Ren being the big bad. I don't think they've built him up that way. I think he's the character that can be redeemed, and we need this big bad. And yeah, I thought Hux might be it. I highly doubt it is, because if he was, why would he answer to Snoke unless he's Snoke's apprentice? But we'll just have to see in the future films. This film had some really good moments in it. I do think it was the length of the film that made it difficult for me to 100% enjoy it, and there were just little nitpicky things I had about it. But all in all, it is a good Star Wars entry, definitely. I preferred it to Rogue One and The Force Awakens, and it'll be interesting to see just how this trilogy rounds out. Obviously, we've got the Han Solo film coming out. They've announced another trilogy, which is going to be completely separate, so we'll just have to see. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. Tell me your thoughts on Star Wars The Last Jedi. Go down into the description below and check out the social media links. And I will see you in the next one.